So it's Thursday, August 4th, 2022. Good morning, I'm Andy Johnson. This is AM Prime. On this Thursday morning, here's what's coming down the pike in this hour. In the next hour, we'll be talking with Mr. Jason Roach. He's the president of the Samoa Business Association. They continue to bemoan the fact that, in their view, crime is not being dealt with effectively. Among other reasons, there is still no substantive police commissioner in the country. And that is affecting how they see the police service tackling the crime problem, particularly in Samoa and other adjoining areas. We're also talking with Mr. Clyde Elder in our second discussion this morning. He's the president of the Communication Workers Union. He is putting the government to notice that the labor movement and workers across the country would not be remaining idly silent on the question of unfair dismissals at WESN. Let's just clarify that. So he's the man in charge of the union representing workers in the telecommunications sector, in TSTT and so on, but he's taking up this issue here about workers in WESN, given what the Minister of Public Utilities has been saying across the media in the last couple of days about how this transformation plan is going to be rolled out and how it will affect workers at the Water and Sewage Authority. So he's addressing that. Of course, we take a look around the region. We tell you what the Newsday poll, the question and the answers are. But right now, we're talking with the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association. Let me just read to you a part of a decision that came down in the last 24 hours. The nurses at the NCRHA, that's the North Central Regional Health Authority, won their case against the employer, which is the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in the Ministry of Health in particular, in order to end the practice of hiring nurses on a temporary basis, making them permanent and allowing for nurses to be granted pensions as well as other benefits. And it says there are implications not just for other employees at the NCRHA, but for nurses generally in other RHAs as well as other public servants working on short-term contracts. Mr. Stewart, good morning.
A pleasant good morning to you and your listeners. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so is that a fact that this judgment will have implications for other employees in other RHAs and public servants and short-term contracts generally? Let me just understand this, that somebody who's working on a short-term contract in the government is still considered to be a public servant, because a public servant used to mean a certain kind of thing, up to this point, that somebody had a job and they were doing that and they were a government employee. So somebody who's on contract, and if we're talking here specifically about short-term contracts, they may be performing the functions of what public servants used to perform, but they're still considered a public servant?
Yes, well, the government really has utilized the statutory authorities to get away from all the benefits, all the salaries and benefits that would normally accrue to public servants. So we, within the regional health authorities, are frequently told that we are not actually public servants. We are quasi-public servants. We work for the state, however, we don't enjoy the same benefits. So a nurse who works out of the Ministry of Health gets better benefits than a nurse who works within the regional health authority. Even though you are doing the same job, even though you would have replaced the position within the Ministry of Health since decentralization in 1994, you are not considered a true public servant. You are considered a worker, a contract worker, whether that contract is permanent or temporary or temporary continuous. As in the case with NCRHA, you are considered a contract worker under the Regional Health Authority. And what was happening, if you were in the public service and you would have been permanent and thus enjoying a pension at the end of your tenure. If you were a contract worker, if you weren't permanent, but you are a contract worker within the public service, you would have been enjoying gratuity at the end of your contract. The majority of RHAs currently, when they employ nurses on contract, even though they really ought not to be employing nurses on contract, because there are vacancies already approved by cabinet for these positions to run our nation's hospital. However, they try to get away from giving nursing personnel permanent employment, and that is across all RHAs, But this particular RHA, not only they're not giving them permanent employment, they weren't giving them, but they were also denying them the opportunity to earn gratuity during their tenure. If it's a 1 year, and this particular RHA was only giving persons 1 year contract without the gratuity. And this ran afoul of the very Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Finance and the CPO's office rationale for contract employment. And in contract employment generally, it's offered on a 3-year basis with contract gratuity paid to the employee at the end.
Right, but 3 years. But in a lot of cases, some nurses don't even get 3 years. They get these month to month, and not necessarily 1 month by 1 month, by 3 months, 6 months, and so on. That's all.
Correct, and that is our challenge. But predominantly, majority of nursing personnel within the NCRHA, and it flowed over now into the NWRHA. So NCRHA started this about a decade ago when they realized they can begin offering this new term, continued temporary employment to nurses just for 1 year. Don't give them any contract, don't give them sometimes any incremental adjustments. So generally, once you work in public service,
yeah, we seem to have lost you there.
and they left it out almost deliberately. And that is what we pointed out to the court, and the court agreed with us. And we would have thought the realization would have dawned on the employer even before we went to court, because we had meetings with the past Minister of Labour, Jennifer Baptiste Primus. We had meetings with this Minister of Labour. We brought the parties together at the Ministry of Labour and at Conciliation. And the minister pointed out to them, the past minister, Jennifer Baptiste Primus, pointed out to them that this is really improper. They should have corrected this. However, they refused to correct the situation. And you have workers 5, 6, 7, 10 years working on this arrangement with no hope for gratuity at the end of their contract. Really unfair. So we have nurses retiring as we speak, who, according to the authority, is not entitled to any form of compensation upon the completion of their work duty. Really?
I want to go back to something you said that about Ms. Baptiste Primus. You said that she pointed out to the authority that this was wrong. She did that as minister, because I want to go back to put a timeline on this development here, because when she was president of the PSA, to the best of my knowledge and recollection and my reporting on it, that she railed against this practice. It was just coming in at that time. We were at sort of the opening end of this situation in which people were more and more being employed on contracts, on short-term contracts, and she sought to address it as president of the PSA. When she became Minister of Labour in that first return to the PNM to government after 2015, one of the first things she did was to hold a symposium at the Hilton to address that issue. But that the thing has become, there's no sense in which it was addressed to the extent that the expectations were created with what she was doing.
Exactly.
And the whole business of contract work has become endemic across the public sector, the public service. To what extent this is unique to us, or it may be the way in which governments in parts of the world have gone to reinforce this issue about contract work in public services?
Well, firstly, you're 100% correct. The former Minister of Labour, Jennifer Baptiste, did hold a symposium, and we actually utilized her statements, her condemning statements, and into our evidence and arguments. We put that forward to the court. And very Minister of Labour, when we filed this matter some 4 years ago, also had an issue with this, and she vowed to bring it to an end. We also used the Honorable Deborah Thomas Felix statement statements and saying how has crept into the public service and it's causing so much havoc because workers don't have that security of tenure. They can't plan their lives. They can't go for mortgages because no bank will lend them money on a one-year contract. So we pointed out all of those things to the court. And even more so, even though following that symposium, we had a meeting, as we indicated, with the Honorable Minister at that time, Jennifer Baptiste Primus, and the employers, because it got so worse that the employers stopped even granting those one-year temporary contracts and start hiring persons exclusively on pool. So they realized they got away with the one-year temporary with no form of gratuity. So they went one step further to say, we're not even going to give you a one-year contract. We're just going to tell you, come to work. Don't give you any paperwork. So we're not even obligated for that 1 year. So they just kept going downhill when they realized they were getting away with this scenario. So in regards to the second avenue, whether the world is going this way, the world is going the way of contract employment in certain jurisdictions, yes. However, it's contract with gratuity to the end. So it's not a matter of, and even the government policy is that you ought not to place someone who you have hired on a contract of service on the same terms and conditions as someone who is permanently employed and call it the same name. So really and truly, if you're hiring someone on contract because of the precarious nature of contract employment, because of the disadvantage of short-term employment, then you ought to pay that person higher than the person who is working on a permanent form of arrangement. And that they weren't doing that. They were paying it was the same basic salary as the permanent employee, doing the same job, fulfilling the same role, just being denied the opportunity to move up the scale, because you are not allowed to do courses when you're on contract. It's the bad, because you must complete any course within the period of your tenure.
Yeah, and so this is at that symposium in 2016. I think there was part of the narrative coming out of that in some cases, when they had done studies or sort of polled people to some extent intermittently and sporadically in different parts of the public sector, some people were saying that, well, at least this is what was reported as part of the narrative, that in some cases people said they preferred the short-term contracts because you get your gratuity and you move on, you get a renewed contract, or you get employed somewhere else on a similar basis. To what extent that was in any way significant and substantial to say that, okay, well, if this is what people prefer, let's continue to go that way?
Well, we have to separate a couple of things. Firstly, nursing employment really ought not to be contract. There's never any thought that we would place police officers on one-year contract. That is not even a thought. It doesn't even come into the consciousness of our minds. We won't put prison officers, fire officers, even teachers on these 1 year, 6 months contract. We will not do that. So why is it necessary to put nursing personnel on contract? So the government will have to explain that, and they have never explained that rationale. So really and truly, this position, the same reason why we're building all these billion-dollar hospitals, $14 billion hospitals throughout Trinidad and Tobago, more hospitals for the population, per 100,000 population, than anywhere else in the world, because we see the need to have a permanent structure, but we don't see the need to have permanent employees in that permanent structure. And then we go on and tell the population we don't have money to bring these persons on permanent, we don't have money to pay them increases, and 2% and 4% is all we can afford, because you, the government, has hamstrung the country by building these facilities, which you really can't staff properly. Actually, as we speak, we have the very RHA we were speaking about, the NTRHA, sending home workers who are employed within the Couva Medical Facility, the newly built Couva Medical Facility. They don't have staff to run that institution. So all the staff that they would have employed during the COVID pandemic period, they are sending them home. They sent home a number of them on Friday.
On what basis?
Even on Fortin Hospital, they don't have staff to fully operate that facility. Do you know there's only one ward working at the Point Fortin Hospital? There's supposed to be a full suite of services. They can't run that Point Fortin Hospital. That was reopened about 3 times. They don't have enough staff. The Roxborough Hospital don't have enough staff. So it's a common thread. And they are still billing the Arima Hospital, the Sandy Grande Hospital, still being built. We don't have staff to run these things. But yet, even though you don't have the number of staff required to fully operationalize these institutions, you are still building more and more hospitals and still not making the existing staff permanent within your establishment. And what is happening? Our nurses are leaving for the same contract employments in England and in USA. However, they are getting a higher salary, of course, and also they are getting gratuity at the end of their tenure. And
so how long did this matter take to get from start to finish at the industrial court?
Well, this particular matter, because we filed several cases, but this particular matter took 4 years from start to finish. Unfortunately, that's the timeline. And what the court sought to do is, seeing that there were about 20 more cases coming down the train, they sought to treat with all of them one time. And in their wisdom, they also placed within the order that mandating the authority, look, in the future, when an employee is hired, do not allow them to remain in this situation for more than 2 years. Because all we have been asking for is for the authority to follow their own human resource policy. Their human resource policy indicates that the first 6 months you are hired, you could be placed on temporary employment. And after that 6 months, it has elapsed. You review their performance appraisal. If it's up to standard, then you have to make them permanent. If it's not, you can send them home or give them an additional 3 months. After that 3 months and the initial 6 months, 9 months max, you cannot allow the employee to remain in this continuous state of purgatory. So the court has given them a little latitude and say, look, after 2 years, you should have sorted out yourself and find out whether or not this person could be placed on permanent employment and make them such.
So the union went to court on the RHA because what the issue is particularly grievous there, or that was just a starting point, and what the decision is now will reflect on employment practices across the health sector? Is that it?
Well, the NCRHA was the main culprit. The other RHAs, for instance, Eastern is not so bad. In Tobago, we have nurses on contract. However, their contract is one that gets gratuity at the end. In Southwest is the same thing. Their contract gets gratuity at the end. So the only real RHA, well, 2 main RHAs, the NCRHA who started this continuous temporary employment, and the NWRHA who has followed suit when they realized they can get away with reducing the benefits of workers because they saw NCRHA doing it. So the next phase is to tackle NWRHA. We would hope that they would have read the judgment, read the unfairness of this practice, and they would rectify their situation. We would want to remind the public that we had held several demonstrations over the last 4 years for this very same issue. And we had our last demonstration October 1st of last year. And we called on the finance minister to make a statement within his budget presentation delivered on October 4th. And the finance minister did, in fact, make a statement highlighting that, yes, he has now been made aware that nursing are being placed on temporary employment, and his government would move to correct this situation by December 31st of last year. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Subsequently, we got the Prime Minister, during Prime Minister Question Day, To respond also, he identified how many nursing personnel this would be affected because they are moving towards making them permanent 3,400 nursing personnel in this predicament. He identified how much it would cost. However, we found that figure, I think he indicated about 50 million. We found that figure to be very low, and we perceive that figure only alluded to just bringing them on permanent as of today, not rectifying the years that they would have been in service prior to the converting them to permanency in 2022, because nurses, as I said, 10 years, 11, 12 would have been working in this state. So that figure could never have represented. So that's why this judgment was so important, that informing the authorities that you must correct the backdated scenario.
Right. So how long did it take? How long did it take this matter to move through the courts from petition, I want to call it, to decision?
Well, you could say 3 years, average 3 years, but we filed the matter because you must go through the Ministry of Labor first. So in all, it was 4 years, but through the courts, it was about 3 years.
All right. So nurses in other RHAs now are sort of crossing their fingers that this will have automatic implications and applications for them.
We would hope so, but more so the workers within the very NCRHA, not only nursing and midwifery personnel, but you have situations with other categories of workers. We hope that this is treated with, because the judgment was quite broad. It was not specific only to this worker, not only specific to nurses and midwives within the RHA, but workers in the NCRHA. So we really hope, while we represent nursing personnel, I think this is definitely a victory for all workers within the RHAs.
All right, Mr. Stewart, thank you very much for talking with us on this.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Edie Stewart, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association. We will take a break. When we come back, we share with you the numbers, well, the Newsday poll, as a matter of fact, the question and the responses, and we continue on the issue of industrial relations in the country, in the public sector. We'll be talking to Mr. Clyde Elder, I almost said Clyde Weatherhead, General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. The issue there is about dismissals at the Water and Sewage Authority. How does he get involved in that? We will find out that and more. So stay with us.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
people really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
We delve into the exciting world of neurology.
The brain is an electrical organ. If the brain doesn't get enough blood with food and oxygen to it, it's not able to supply the electricity to the rest of the body. If that happens for a prolonged period enough time where the brain stops getting blood, part of the brain dies. Essentially, that's a stroke.
Hey guys, so I'm getting a little nostalgic here, sitting on the blocks at the pool. Today we're going to talk a little bit about swimming. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back to the program. Moments from now, Mr. Clyde Weatherhead. He's the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, and that is the union that represents in the main workers at the TSTT and places like that. But he's weighing in this morning on the situation at the Water and Sewage Authority, in which the government has begun to be more expansive about what the plan is for what is called a transformation there. And he's saying that the labor movement will not sit idly by and allow unfair dismissals of workers there. But before we get to that, however, let's take a look at what the Newsday poll is, the question and the response. And the question is, do you feel our leading athletes in the Commonwealth Games are now getting enough support from the state? And there's one response. The Commonwealth Games are just another reminder of how much the British ruled the world and how they continue to do so. That's one response. Another is, not then, not now, never will. No money from boss hogs for athletes, cricketers, footballers. Only money for deals like buildings, roads, boats, and planes where a personal return for the investment is realized. No money in sports for the check writers. And the final response, long story short, no. Those are the responses to the questions as to whether or not there's enough money from the state to athletes in sporting endeavors, Trinidad and Tobago. Let's get to the issue now. Mr. Elder is with us. He's the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, but he's talking here about the possibility, about unfair dismissals at the Water and Sewage Authority. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Andy, and just to let you know, it's Clyde Elder, not Clyde Weatherhead.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
but let me ask you, why is this? Well, first of all, how are you weighing in on this? This is WASA, this is NUGFW and PSA. You are CWU, which has to do with TSTT and matters like that. You've been sort of nominated to address this matter on behalf of the trade union movement.
Well, no, I'm actually here as the Secretary General of the Communication Workers Union, as you said, and the union that is immediately faced with the last set of retrenchment in this country, which is TSTT, which happened just about 2 weeks ago. And you will recall that the Communication Workers Union was on record and is on record as saying that it is not going to stop at TSTT. They are going to continue with other state entities, and we did indicate that this government has been on a systemic plan of attack to destabilize union and to attack decent paying jobs or unionized jobs. And the history will show that that is in fact so. When you look at what happened to ArcelorMittal, even though that was a private company, the state did nothing to protect the workers. When you look at what happened to Petrotrin, when you look at what happened to TDC, Caroni Green, when you look at what happened to GHRSL, when you look at what happened to even in the days of CAL and BWIA, when you look at Caroni, what it used to be, when you look at was intended for Tiantec, was intended for the port. What happened to us at KSTT twice? Now they're at WASA, we have a caution that they're going to come to WASA. We caution that they're going to come to Tiantec. We caution that they're going to come at the port. We caution that they're going to come at the public services in terms of the Revenue Authority, and those things are coming to pass. And we are here to basically see that we are in solidarity with our comrades at WASA.
All right, you're not putting any assurance in some of the latest remarks in the discussions with the Minister of Public Utilities. There's one story in the paper in the last couple of days in which he's hinting that there are discussions going on with the unions. We're talking about the PSA and the NUGFW, and he said that in the discussions, well, at least from the reporting, that they're talking about VSEP, and the unions seem to support that. Is that not to be taken on its face?
No, it's not, because it's the same thing that was said for TSTT, the same thing that was said for Petrotrin at first. Remember when they didn't tell us it was all for Petrotrin, and then they came afterwards and said it was all. Remember when they said that they were in fact engaged in discussions with CW and they had set up a steering committee to look at the company and whether or not it was fit for purpose. Nothing happened to all of those things. All of those things are just promises and lip service, really. Those are pipe dreams that they're selling people, and they continue to sell people. The narrative that they use with Petrotrin is the same. The next thing they're going to do, Andy, and look out for it, they're going to start demonizing every single worker in WASA. They're going to make it look like if the workers are the ones who are responsible for the situation WASA is in, and they are going to put the public against WASA workers. That is what they did. That is the same script they're using, and nothing is going to change. So I take no comfort in the Minister of Public Utilities saying, look, we are involved in discussions with the unions, and we want to talk about VSEP and what have you. They are going to do what they want to do.
Yeah, well, he said that
they get rid of VSEP.
Yeah, he said that they seem to prefer that, and so neither of the unions' representatives has come forward to say, well, no, we're not in discussions, or we're not agreeing with how they're proposing to do it.
And strangely enough, Andy, we had proposed the same kind of approach for TSTT, and they rejected that. So if it is not something that you want to involve in TSTT, then what changes with WASA? What is the different situation with WASA? So I do not accept what he says. I do not at all believe him. He has been a stranger to the truth from all my dealings with him. And I do not take any comfort, and the WASA workers should not take any comfort in what he says.
In what respect?
I don't think they did.
You said he's been a stranger to the truth in all your dealings with him, like for instance?
For instance, when we had met with the Minister of Public Utilities, he promised that before the company engaged in any restructuring exercise, he was going to have a meeting with the executive of the union, again, executive of the company, bring us together and let us have a meeting where we could talk about issues in his presence and try to mend the relationship between CW and TSTT. Never happened. He had spoken about being on this steering committee, where they're supposed to bring a report to the cabinet and to Parliament by June 1st, I think it was. And then I think they said June 30th afterwards. Never happened. He has indicated that, look, TSTT and CW, they're in discussions and the talks are going well and whatever. Never happened, right? And when you look at it, not just him, the government and the companies have not been honest with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So in my dealings with him, he has not been honest.
What do you mean when you say, you're quoted here saying the longest rope has an end? What do you mean by that?
Well, you see, the government seems to believe that they'll be in power forever. PNM government seems to believe that what they do, that they alone could do it, and that they could do it with impunity. And that is not so. And the longest rope has an end. And whether or not they choose to accept it, the end is nigh. And they have to just wake up and smell the coffee, because people can't be PNM till they're dead, and PNM self-killing them. People can love the party PNM so much, and PNM don't care about them, and they expect people to continue taking that abuse forever and ever. Amen. The longest rope has an end.
Yeah, but you think that WASA as an institution, and therefore, by association, workers at WASA are regarded too positively in the minds, in the public minds, given the issues with the delivery of water to many people in many parts of the country?
And the issues at WASA, Andy, and I'm not here to speak on behalf of WASA workers. I do not represent WASA workers. As you said before, they are represented by NUJ for the daily paid workers and PSA for the monthly paid workers. And the issue at WASA, Andy, and all of the other companies that we have been talking about, they have been management issues. And that is why they seem to try to placate those remarks of the trade union movement by saying, okay, we're going to fire all the managers first. But those managers are workers too. And therefore, the governments, successive governments, have not dealt with the water management and water distribution and sewage management of this country properly. And they have consistently blamed workers, and workers take the fall. Who made the deal with Severn Trent? Those were not the workers on the ground. Who caused all of this hemorrhaging of all this money that's taking place at WASA? The workers on the ground are not responsible for the purse of WASA. So how it is that the workers are to blame for the issues at WASA? And we are not, but you'll find that there's convenient ways and means to blame workers, to say, well, okay, I don't see them lying on the corner when it's also working. Well, in any event, management has a disciplinary procedure that it can take to deal with errant workers. And if you're not doing that, then it means that you're not doing your function as management either. So at the end of the day, you still blame workers, and you have not performed your function, fulfilled your function, both as management and as government. So I expect that workers are continuing to be blamed. I expect that. I expect that we're going to be thrown under the bus as always. I expect that. But I also expect that as responsible unions within WASA, which is PSA and NUJ, and they are responsible unions, that they will come out and call us spade and say, look, listen, we are not responsible for this thing. This thing didn't get into a debt of over $1 billion overnight. That didn't happen just so, and that is not the workers themselves who did that. How can a management engage in a restructuring and a visa plan in WASA for a number of years, and after that, hire back the same people, or hire back people in the same position that they send people from? Workers on the ground don't do that. Those are management decisions. Those are cabinet decisions. And if they don't want to say it, WASA TSTT Petrotrin has been used as a feeding trough to employ and to hire political individuals as payback. And that is what it is.
Well, for a long time, that used to be the case to some extent. WASA was one of those agencies that people used to say back from the 70s and the 80s that was a PNM, a party group in and of itself, and the Port Authority and so on. Those were, I came into the workforce hearing those things many years ago. And for a lot of people,
CW is not party group number 13, so I understand what you're saying.
All right. But in this case, so the government is putting, and the minister is putting a lot of emphasis on saying that, and what do you think are the sort of signals of the optics there? They are putting the focus, at least in the beginning, on the management, and that's why they're saying that half of the current leadership crew at WASA will have to go, and people are being asked to put in their their terms and conditions as to how they want to go, and then they will pare down from there. So to what extent that is sort of trying to shift the thing away from the general workforce to say, in the main, we begin with the issue that the problem has been management and leadership, so we want to address that first.
Yeah, and that's just a smokescreen really, because the issue really is to get rid of the workers at WASA. And if you want to get rid of the workers at WASA, then you start at the top, so they wouldn't say that you come and touch us, they didn't touch the management, and then come and touch us. So they're going to start there. That's really a smokescreen. That is smoke and mirrors really, because at the end of the day, those managers at WASA, I believe that they are decently paid and they are well paid, and that they will go home with basically a golden handshake. That will not be the fate of the workers on the ground, I can assure you.
You think it will be another kind of arrangement?
Well, so I would imagine, based on a formula that is used, that given that their salaries are significantly lower, and in some cases their years of service may be less, that their compensation in the end will be less.
Yeah, you don't believe that the authority may be overstaffed, all things being considered?
Well, as I said, I don't represent WASA, and I do not speak on behalf of the WASA workers. Whether or not it's overstaffed, that is for the unions who are involved to say or to not say. I cannot say because I don't know what is the requirements for the functioning of WASA, so I can't say it's overstaffed. The unions may very well say it is understaffed because vacancies have not been filled. I don't know. That is for the unions to decide. But what I can say is that at the end of the day, this government is going to do all they can do to ensure that they send home the workers of WASA.
What do you expect? So you are sort of volunteering, as it were, to raise that issue, given what you say has been the experience at the agencies where there are workers that you represent. What do you expect to be the sort of pushback from the substantive unions and, to some extent, if we will go there, the general labor movement on the WASA situation? Well,
firstly, I expect that the substantive unions will engage in consultation with the management. I believe that consultation, however, is a sham consultation, because at the end of the day, the decision to send them the workers have been made. It's not like they're asking for the input of the union before they make the decision. The decision is already made, and they just want to know how do we execute it. And that's really a sham consultation. And I expect that there's going to be some kind of pushback in the form of protest actions, in the form of even maybe legal action, according to how it is done. I don't know. I don't represent the workers of WASA, as I said before. But I also expect that the trade union movement, at some point in time, we are going to come together and say, look, listen, when it was Petrotrin, the Petrotrin workers came out, but the country didn't come out. It was TSC workers come out, but the country didn't come out. It was TDC, same thing happened. And at some point in time, the trade union movement has to say, look, enough is enough. It doesn't matter if you're in the chopping block or not. You're going to be in chopping block next. Let's all come together and let's say to this government, it's time for them to go.
Right,
and that's the only way that people can be saved and people's jobs can be saved.
All right, Mr. Elder, thank you very much.
Most welcome, Andy.
All right, so let's just begin our look around the region. We go to Guyana, where they say that the government is focusing more on infrastructure development. We have a report from News Source Guyana.
President Irfan Ali's second anniversary in office, the government today reflected on his presidency as a watershed moment for the preservation of the democratic credentials of the country. Over the last 2 years, the government has been credited for a number of initiatives, but has also been criticized for allegations of marginalization of some communities. In a statement today, the PP Civic government said its development agenda is for all Guyanese, as it focuses on transforming the country. The government said it is already 2 years into the economic and social transformation of Guyana, which will see the empowerment of every Guyanese in every part of the country. In the anniversary statement, the government also said it has made cash grants available to citizens to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic and the rise in the cost of living. The government said a number of other social programs have been undertaken by its various departments in the past 2 years.
Together we have a lot to do. Together we have already accomplished a lot. Together we have overcome many challenges. The mere fact that I sit before you today is as a result of the collective will of the Guyanese people, not to allow a few to derail democracy rob you of your rights, rob you of your fundamental right in placing that vote. It is the collective efforts of so many Guyanese from different walks of life, with the help of the international community and those who love democracy, love the rule of law, and love freedom, that has allowed us this opportunity to serve you. As your chief servant, I continue to dedicate my energies and my life in service to you and for you. Indeed, I'm grateful for the supporters of the party who took the step to vote for me in those 2020 elections. Your vote of confidence in me and the PPP was not for yourselves, but was for the betterment of Guyana.
All right, we go to Barbados now, where there's a story from Barbados today about sex workers complaining that they're being attacked and targeted while plying their trade.
That's according to President of the Global Adult Industry Association, Charlie Spice Lewis, who urged police to ramp up patrols in areas where sex workers are known to operate. His comments come in the wake of 44-year-old Guyanese sex worker Carolyn Beard being killed last Friday night.
The feeling is that they do not give sex workers the same attention when it comes to investigation as they do others. And also, people who are from the criminal element, they too feel that police do not give as much attention to crimes committed against sex workers, and this empowers them more to commit crimes against sex workers. So to decriminalize it would remove those contributors, to crime against sex workers.
As we're going up the island chain a bit now to St. Lucia, where they say the Ministry of Education is making much needed repairs to schools, with students returning to physical classrooms in September coming.
The transition to more virtual instruction shifted focus from the physical to the virtual infrastructure. That resulted in the deterioration of many schools on island. The Minister for Education, Honorable Sean Edward, informs that works have continued at schools to make the physical environment more conducive to learning.
We have started our school rehabilitation program, which normally happens during the months of July and August. The objective of that program has always been, and it continues to be, to create as comfortable a learning environment as possible for our students and teachers.
The Minister of Education believes that the ministry is not working with enough funds to meet the demands of every school on island.
Yes, we're working with roughly $3 million this year for school rehabilitation.
I think that's an improvement, right?
That can never be enough given some of the issues we have in schools, but we have done a thorough assessment of the school plans in the country, and it's a matter of being strategic in terms of what you undertake where. Of course, the needs will be greater at some schools compared to others, but what is important is that we do a thorough assessment and we deploy the money in the areas where we believe the works will be most impactful.
Despite the lack of funds, the minister says he is pleased with the progress of the works.
What I've seen so far, the works are progressing very smoothly, and I'm very confident that the monies that have been allocated, we will get good quality workmanship for that, and that come September 5th when school reopens, our children will be in a much better environment, and that the learning process will be facilitated by teachers who would have been well rested and who would return to the classroom, of course, with the same degree of commitment and passion that we've seen from them, especially during the time that I've presided over the affairs of the Ministry of Education.
Calls for the rehabilitation of schools have been echoed by parents, teachers, and students.
And we come to Grenada now, where it is said that the government there has received high recognition from macroeconomic advisors for what is said to be its foresight in setting up a Ministry of Mobilization.
Dr. Grenade made the comments while presenting during the government's retreat for ministers and senior managers at the Radisson Crown Ballroom on Friday. Transformation, Dr. Carrie Grenade says, can only be achieved working together towards a common vision, as a national plan and manifesto cannot self-implement. She says there must be a systematic and intentional approach about what are the overall achievable objectives in a given time frame.
The creation of the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation has to play a crucially important role. They are the deliverers. They are the ones that are delivering the government's priorities. And so they are, in delivery units, as we call them, as they are called, which is conceptually no different than the MIT Grenada. They are the ones that get things done. They are the movers and shakers. They are the ones that their mantra typically is big results fast. That's the mantra of development. So their mantra, and this has worked in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia to some extent. It is now working in the Bahamas, supported by this Caribbean Development Bank. Delivery units that are designed to get big results fast.
There are other governments in the region who have realized positive results from the establishment of MITS, and Dr. Grenade believes that with the right approach and structure, the government's overall objectives will materialize.
They mobilize, they ensure that the project management arrangements are in place, they ensure that the ministries that are implementing have their work programs and everything all organized and clearly set out. And crucially important, they are not just managing and not just supporting implementation, but they are also monitoring and managing performance, government effectiveness.
All right, next we have news on the hour. On this other side of which, we're talking with Mr. Jason Roach. He's the president of the Samoa Business Association. They're saying that association is saying that the fact that there continues to be no substantive commissioner of police is affecting the crime situation. So we talk with him about that on the other side. Stay with us.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to the program. Well, our guest now is Mr. Jason Roach. He's the president of the Sour Business Association. He's making an issue of the fact that there is no substantive person in the position of Commissioner of Police. And he said that has an effect on what the crime situation is in the country. Mr. Roach, good morning.
Hi, great morning, Andy.
All right, well, good to have you. Why do you think the issue has to do with the substantive appointment of a commissioner of police? Why do you think, what's the psychology you think behind that as to why crime is what it is? Or at least what you say it is.
Yes, it's a management thing. When you have a person in a role and it's not a confirmed position, the question has to be asked, are they really able to make the difficult decisions that they need to without fear or favor, right? So the fact that we have had a commissioner of police in a position, obviously no fault of his, is really the system and the investigation taking place in the background. But the fact that he has been in that position for such a long time, being unsecured, we really have to think about whether or not he's really able to effect sustainable change and effective change within the service, right? We want to be sure and certain that, in operating in that role, you're not acting in a role on the whims of the fancy of an investigation and what happens and then the process that actually have to take place. We have to put people's minds at ease. And obviously, when you hear some of the issues from a community level that the police service have, the vehicles are not being repaired on time, or they just don't have vehicles at all. This really boils down to a management issue. And is the head of the organization and the management of the organization really articulating the resources they really need to fight the crime? So this is what really concerns me with regards to that point of him not being able to be in a confirmed position.
Maybe it's worse now than it was back then, but we went through a period in which an individual acted as commissioner of police for 7 or 8 years, 6 or 7 years. Exactly,
right? And we saw if it is we were to correlate that with the crime statistics, we've been fairly consistent in terms of the murder rate that we've been hitting over the years. I think we've been hovering around the 500 mark for some time. And that isn't comforting, but we can't help but notice that this position before the last commissioner, you're saying 6 years, we have noticed a fairly consistent crime rate, if I have to put it lightly, and that is also on the background of the fact that the position has not been a permanent one for a significantly long period of time. I really think we have to address that issue to really normalize the police service and get some good ideas and change moving. We really need some change to get things rolling. You think that under the last confirmed commissioner, in whom the Prime Minister said publicly that he had lost confidence in him, you think that made a difference in addressing what we know to be the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago for all his antics and his gymnastics and so on? You think it made a substantive difference? Well, we are not really looking at the personality involved, whether it is Mr. Jacobs or Guy Griffith or whoever is a qualified person to lead the police service. We are not really too caught up with who the personality should be, but we really want to point to the process and the facts. And the fact is that how do you expect to get the change that you need in a police service if it is we don't have the political will and expediency to correct the situation, to ensure that the organization is managed properly? I think that is the big question. That is a question that needs to be answered, and that is where priority needs to lie. So, I'm not sure what will happen in the new process, and we are certainly not in the business of advocating for any one particular person. We would really like to see whoever it is operate from a perspective that of sustainability and comfort and security, and they need to rectify that service quickly.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get at. So there was a confirmed person in there for 3 years, up until last year and so on. Did that sort of deliver itself in terms of the sense of assurance that people have from what you're speaking? What was the sense that we had that things were under control or being brought under control?
Yes, and you're very correct. I think that, change is a process, and it takes time. I can't say whether or not Mr. Griffith would have had enough time in his role to really get the results that he wanted. That is not a question for me. But even in him leaving the post, obviously, there are some people are in favor of having him there. There are some people that are not in favor of having him there. But I think in the public domain, from at the citizen level, there is quite a large following of persons that, let's say, observed some of the changes that he made. Right, and that is very important because we when you talk about leadership, you need a certain level of charisma and impact, to really motivate people and inspire people and bring confidence. So,
and you think he had that?
At some level, I think whatever the issue is with regards to the essence of the report, that's a different story, right? And really and truly, you have to lead by example. So while we could point to some things that are good under his tenure, there are some gray crowds that need to be settled, right? But we are not really caught up as an association. SHB is not really caught up with the personality. We are looking at the process and the facts.
Right. You don't think sometimes the optics and the visuals create certain kinds of impressions in people's minds, and whatever one may think that I think about Mr. Griffith, he had a different presence from Mr. Jacob. Mr. Jacob has a different presence from him. You think people measure Mr. Jacob against how Mr. Griffith used to come across, and to some extent still comes across?
I don't like to compare people from their styles. They obviously have different styles. I believe that Mr. Jacob is probably getting results in his own right, in terms of how he relates to his officers and really manages the organization, right? And also under Griffith, he would have also had his ways in terms of getting the results that he wanted to get. So, there will always be different leadership styles. So this is why our position is not to look at the personality, because any leader that you put there will have a different style, right? But the issue that we want to point to is really getting that person who you have to lead the organization to do it without fear or favor.
Yeah, so it's useful that you're saying what you're saying in the way that you're saying it, because to some extent, some people seeing the issue that you're raising, we need a confirmed commissioner of police. There are some people who, when they read into that you probably don't favor the incumbent, one way or the other. That's not what you're saying at all.
That's not what we're saying. It's like if I have to create an example, if it is you hire a new manager and you have that manager on probation, you give him a probationary period, right? He may know or suggest some changes to be made to the organization or his department, right? But some of those changes may take a certain level of will, and it may upset the advocate, right? And a person in a temporary position may not want to rock the boat that hard to get what it is they desire. You would tend to see them kind of play for time, until they're settled and in a position to actually make the serious changes that they need to make. Because obviously, if you're in a temporary position, you don't know if it is you upset the advocate, you may be out of a job a month down the road. That's how it works from a managerial standpoint. So, we really point into best practices there. And what is happening there is not ideal, from a best practice standpoint.
Yeah.
So it has to be corrected.
Yeah, you think it's just a normal feature of human nature that somebody in a position where they don't know if they're coming or they're going would not want to be as forceful.
Yeah, you have no clarity and you have no sense of direction, and quite frankly, in discussions that we have, everything just seems so ad hoc, and a lot of people are operating in silos, and that has to point to, the leadership synergies. And we really have to look, because when you look at an organization, the bottom line, you would look at the bottom line of the organization, and in this instance, the bottom line is the crime rate, right? But when you have to lead an organization, it starts and stops with the head, right? And if it is, we have the head in a situation that is not competent, how are we really to get the results that we want to get? So this is where we are really articulating our minds to understand the situation, but it's something that needs a lot of emphasis because we are now going into a budget period, right? And we want to ensure that this type of discussion is articulated because, we're going to give the Ministry of National Security a very huge budget that probably needs to be enhanced, because obviously I can't understand why we continue to get complaints or excuses that there are no police vehicles to do patrols, right? But we really need some sort of regularization of that position to get the resources that we need and really manage the affairs of the service properly.
Yeah. What is informing your sense that the fact that somebody continues to act there has an impact on the committal and the commission of crime in the country? What are the numbers that inform you about that?
Come again, rephrase the question.
What is there to suggest to you that because this position isn't sorted out, and that somebody is effectively in charge, as is said in some quarters, that in itself has an effect on the commission of crime in the country? Why is there probably, what you're saying is that there's more crime and crime is not being brought under control? The evidence is saying that. What is the direct connection between that and the fact that you have somebody who continues to act?
Well, again, it's a matter of motivation and leadership, from the standpoint of change. If it is you put somebody in a position and they obviously, based on how the organization was being run in the past, there may be changes. There are technological advancements, there's new technology. You really have, it's a moving stone. You also have the public servant situation with regards to pay. We've often heard a lot of complaints or comments in the public domain that officers are not paid well enough, right? All of these things are what I call managerial issues. And if it is their managerial issues in the organization, right? We heard a dispute a month ago with regards to FET promoters having a dispute with how much off-duty charges are actually passed on to them when they're doing their events. Obviously, the officers are looking for extra money at the side, right? These are management issues. So when I see these things, right, and we have a situation where the crime rate isn't really going anywhere, it's more or less consistent, right? Then we have to ask ourselves, or start to put on our magnifying glass and start to examine to understand what the real issue is. Is it that the organization is the morale in the organization isn't high? I don't know, right? But these are the issues that we have to look at, and I would go put my head on a block for this. That if it is you have a leader in limbo, right? If you have a leader in limbo, I don't think these issues will be sorted.
Yeah, you say crime. These are your words. Crime isn't going anywhere. It's kind of consistent. I thought you were coming to this issue from the perspective you have that it continues to go up as opposed to going down.
Yes, it's going up. It's going up gradually, right? It's going up gradually, but where it is not comforting. I mean, in our community, we last week or the week before, I would have gone to Mova, Malik, right, to a community football series that the corporation was having, and it was a very successful event, and I have to applaud them in terms of the initiative that they're taking. But 1 week later, a teenager got killed. This was a couple of days ago in that shoot up in Malik, and these kind of things, it really ravages the community, and it really distorts people's impression on the community as well, right? And we really have to think hard, engage stakeholders, from different ministries, NGOs. Everybody could make a contribution in terms of getting this issue of crime under control. So I don't want to solely blame the police. The police can't solve crime on its own. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not really pegging that crime rate on the Commissioner of Police, because, let's face it, we have a lot of single parent families as well. There are a lot of parenting issues. Is the Commissioner of Police really responsible for that? So we can't give him all the blame on the high crime rate. We have to be realistic and mature about it. But I have to look at the fact, and the fact is, right, that we are significantly high. It's gradually increasing, right? And what we have done in the past has not worked. So we need a new approach going forward.
Yeah.
And that is what we have to start discussing.
Yeah, and so the issue for you then would be, if this is the man for the job, let the process go ahead. Let the process be ensued and confirm him, or find somebody and confirm them.
Exactly, confirm him or find somebody, right? We really have to make a commitment. I mean, I'm starting to think that in this country, that everything that's supposed to happen actually takes 3 to 4 times longer than it actually supposed to happen. And that is amazing. We have a situation as well. Just last week, Akili Charles, right? That was murdered. But when it is you read into the content of the story, this young man actually was waiting on a trial for over 10 years, right? How are we fighting crime? And for the few people that we do catch, right? Because we have a very low detection rate. For the few people that we do catch, we are unable to bring justice in a timely manner, right? If we are not unable to bring justice in a timely manner, right, that is motivating criminals, in my opinion, because obviously you could do something, get away with it, or if it is you get caught, right, you will not face the ultimate penalty, right, for the actions that you have done.
Yeah. Just to make the point here, there are two ironies in this, because so he spent 9 years or more or less on remand, and then when the matter came to court, it was held that there was no case against him, so he came out and then got killed. At least the police report is that they believe that he got killed because he refused to join a gang, and the people who killed him now would stand to benefit from the activism that he entered in prison, fighting for people who are on remand for murder should be considered for bail, and he got bail.
Yes.
And they could apply to get bail now.
Exactly. I think it's a landmark case in that sense, But even on the whole issue of bail, right? I was talking about everything in this country takes 3 to 4 times longer than it should actually take, right? How long have we been hearing about the Bail Amendment Act, right? How long has that been in discussion, or we trying to get it passed? There's no consensus on the government and opposition side, right? And it's just being put off, and it's just going down the road, right? And this is what I mean about finding the political will. We have to find a way to get it done. Yeah. Whether it is making compromise to find consensus, right? The fact of the matter is, it is a burning issue. And this case that just went with Akili Charles, it is very prevalent.
Yeah. Well, the last issue of the Bail Act is that the government wanted to extend the provisions for denying bail, and the majority in the parliament said no, because you did that we did this for a number of years, and it didn't impact sufficiently on the crime rate as we thought that it would. So they voted against it. But I wanted to ask you about, so the Port of Spain Business Organization recently, last week or so, sort of shouted back at the Port of Spain, the mayor and the council, because they were trying to encourage them to do things to spruce up the look of the capital city. And they said, almost to our man, we'll fix crime first. So that crime is a real issue. If you want us to encourage more people to come and shop in Port of Spain, fix the crime problem, and we will deal with it afterwards. One imagines that it's a similar kind of situation in Samoa and environs.
Well, I mean, that's outside of the jurisdiction of San Juan, right? But our style really is very collaborative. You know, we want to always have a very good relationship with the different stakeholders in the community. And I think it's very important to have that relationship with the corporation. And obviously you want to have dialogue to get on the same page. You should want the same thing, right? Everyone wants to better the community. So it shouldn't be too hard to agree on some items, you know? But I think one of the things sometimes that gets us to not agree is to operate from a place of arrogance, right? Certainly we don't have this problem in San Juan, right? We work very closely with the corporation, the councillors, right? You know, that team spirit goes hand in hand to achieve what it is you want to get. And, you know, we have to commend the efforts of the corporation thus far, because one of the things about local government in our community is that they are the glue that holds everything together in terms of pulling all the various state enterprises like the WASA, the TNTech, and everybody come together, make suggestions or bring critique or complaints, right, to be resolved. And it's discussed and go forward on one page. So when you get into a public spat, right, or criticizing the people that you should be working with in the public domain, that could be a little challenging, right? But, you know, you have to point out the facts, but really and truly you should try to seek consensus first.
All right. Mr. Roach, thank you very much for talking with us this morning.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Jason Roach advocating there for some effective decisions as to the next commissioner of police, he says, because that has an impact on the continuing rise in crime in the country, in his area and in the country. So that's our broadcast for this morning. We want to thank you for watching. We tell you can get in touch with us here at AM Prime. You could check us out on WESNCC on all the social media platforms, and you could send your emails to us in particular at amprime@wesncc.com. We have news on the hour at the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Messrs. Shah and Small. But for now, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.